Abe was the first Japanese legislator to be assassinated since Koki Ishii was killed by a member of a right-wing group in 2002, and the first Japanese politician to be assassinated during an electoral campaign since Icho Ito, the then mayor of Nagasaki, who was shot and killed during his mayoral race in April 2007. None of that really has to do with Shinzo Abe, but I was just surprised that so many politicians have been assassinated or almost assassinated in Japan. Though I guess in the grand scheme of things it isn't really that many, but like, everyone's always like, oh, there's no violence in Japan, nothing bad happened in Japan, people aren't crazy in Japan. Apparently they are. So, Abe was supporting a politician named Sanshiro Matsuyama, who was running for the House of Councillors, which is the upper house of the National Diet of Japan. And basically there's two parts that make up Japan's government, which is the National Diet, and then of course there's the Prime Minister at the top, and the two parts are the House of Councillors, or the upper house, and the House of Representatives, which is the lower house, but the House of Representatives is the more powerful house. It's kind of confusing. I mean, I guess it's not really that confusing, but I don't know. So like, what usually happens when a politician is endorsing a candidate, Abe was going to make a speech in honor of Sanshiro Matsuyama, since there was an election coming soon. The first event was supposed to take place on July 8th, 2022, yeah. I thought I was saying that wrong for some reason. In Nagano Prefecture, which is about 2.5 hours west of Tokyo. That got cancelled the day before because of allegations against Matsuyama of misconduct and corruption, so Abe ended up not supporting him anymore, I guess, because they rescheduled him to do a speech in support of another politician named Kei Sato, who was an LDP, which is Liberal Democratic Party, councillor running for re-election. This was going to be in Nara, which is close to Osaka, and about 6.5 hours southwest of Tokyo. So the venue for the campaign event was a road intersection near the north exit of Yamato Saidaishi Station in Nara City. Abe would be standing inside a traffic island in the intersection with his back to the train station. Which seems like a weird place to have a speech, but whatever. As far as security went for the event, the Nara Prefecture division of the Liberal Democratic Party said that the schedule for the event wasn't generally publicly known. But the NHK, which is, I don't know what that stands for, but it's a broadcasting station in Japan, they reported that the event was widely advertised on Twitter and by sound truck. The Nara police and Sato's campaign staff inspected the site where the speech was going to happen the night before, and the head of the prefectural police approved the security plan a few hours before the speech was set to take place. Though one prefectural assembly member said that after the fact, quote, "I thought it was a dangerous place that made it easy to attack from the cars and bicycles that pass along the road behind him." Hindsight's 2020, huh? The speech started at around 11:10 a.m. on July 8th, with Sato speaking first. Abe, along with his VIP protection officers from the Nara Prefectural Police, arrived 9 minutes later, and his speech started at 11:29 a.m. About a minute after he started speaking, while he was saying, quote, "Instead of thinking about why he, Sato, cannot do it," which in Japanese is, "Kare wa dekinai riyu o kangaeru no de wa naku," a sound like a 1 unit of blood is about a pint, so you can imagine how much they gave him. The doctor said that Abe had been hit by 2 bullets, and one wasn't found in his body, so it must have gone all the way through. A judicial autopsy was required, so Abe's body left the hospital with his widow at 5:55 a.m. the next day, July 9th. A 5-car motorcade with various old professional acquaintances of Abe's, including the former defense minister Tomomi Inada, traveled back to Tokyo, which is where Abe lived. At 11:35 p.m., they got to Abe's house, where multiple friends and government officials were waiting for them. Those were Sanae Takaichi, the chairman of the LDP Policy Research Council, Tatsuo Fukuda, the chairman of the LDP General Council, and Hisashi Hieda, the chairman of Fujisankei Communications Group. A bit later, Prime Minister Kishida came by to give his condolences, along with former Prime Ministers Yoshiro Mori and Junichiro Koizumi. Hiroyuki Hosoda, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Akiko Santo, the President of the House of Councilors, Toshihiro Nikai, the former Secretary General of the LDP, Koichi Akiyuda, who was Abe's close aide, and the Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry, Tetsuo Saito, a politician of Komeito, and the Minister of Land, Infrastructure, Transport, and Tourism, and Yuriko Koike, the governor of Tokyo. The judicial autopsy showed that the cause of his blood loss was a damaged artery under his collarbone, which I'm guessing is the subclavian artery. This microphone has a cord and it's plugged into my camera, so I don't have to add the sound separately from the video, because when I make a video usually I have my microphone plugged into my computer and I record the audio from the microphone separately, and then I take out the audio from the video and replace it with the audio from my microphone. But since I got this one now, I hopefully won't have to do that. But it's weird having a wire connecting all the way to my camera. Anyway, so the man who was arrested at the scene of the assassination was Tetsuya Yamagami from Nara. He was 41 years old, unemployed, and had no criminal history at all. He was born on September 10th, 1980, in Mie Prefecture, which is right to the east of Nara Prefecture, so close to Osaka in the southern part of Japan's main island. His family ran a local construction business, so they were pretty well off, and Yamagami himself was described as quiet and reserved by his high school classmates. He wrote in his graduation yearbook that he, quote, didn't have a clue what he wanted to do with his life. He graduated from Nara Prefectural Koiyama Senior High, Koriyama Koko in Japanese, in 1998 with the idea of becoming a firefighter, but he couldn't pass the test required to become one because he was nearsighted. Damn. He didn't go to college since his family was having financial problems at the time, which I will get into, and he ended up going to a vocational school that his uncle, a retired lawyer, paid for. Despite his family being relatively wealthy, Yamagami's life was full of struggles and tragedy from pretty early on. His father committed suicide by jumping off of something when Yamagami was 4 in 1984. Yamagami's older brother also died by suicide after a lifelong battle with lymphoma that led to him going blind in one eye, and which the family couldn't afford to treat. According to Yamagami's uncle, the death of his brother really had a big impact on Yamagami. So the reason why I keep saying that the family had no money is because Yamagami's parents were deeply involved with the Unification Church, and especially his mother. After the death of Yamagami's maternal grandfather, his mother inherited ownership of the family construction business, and she eventually donated most of the wealth, about 100 million yen or $720,000, though I saw varying numbers Yamagami joined the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, which is basically just the Navy, in August of 2002, and he was posted to Kure Naval Base, assigned to the destroyer JS Matsuyuki. Yamagami found out that his mother was neglecting his brother to go to Unification Church meetings in South Korea, and so in February 2005, while he was still in the military, he tried to commit suicide. The Navy, I'm just going to call it the Navy, investigated the incident, and in a report about it, Yamagami said that his, quote, life had been ruined by the Unification Church, and that, quote, his brother and sister are in need, and he wanted to, quote, help them by giving them my life insurance. He moved to the General Affairs Department of the Navy for a service school in Etajima, and in August 2005, he was discharged from the service as a quartermaster with the rank of leading seaman. After that, Yamagami worked for at least 10 different companies over the course of 17 years, until the assassination. In December 2006, he was a part-timer at a surveying company, but quit in June 2007. He was unemployed for 2 years, but got an assistant surveyor license and a real estate notary license. After that, he mostly took short-term, part-time jobs or dispatched labor, I don't know what that is, and quit after about half a year for personal reasons. The longest he held a job for was a year and a half. In October 2020, Yamagami started working as a forklift operator in Kyoto Prefecture for a manufacturer that operated in the Kansai region. His coworkers there described him as being quiet. He quit in May 2002 because he was feeling unwell, and he worked for a temporary staffing firm in Osaka Prefecture until he resigned a month before the assassination, which was June 2022. So, now I'm going to talk about the church for a little bit. I do apologize because I'll kind of be going back and forth between a lot of different stuff for the rest of the video, and I'll get back into more of the details leading up to the assassination and that kind of thing too. But, yeah. So the church's official name is the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, or the FFWPU, but is mostly referred to as the Unification Church, which is how I'll be referring to it. The members are called Unificationists, or sometimes Moonies, though apparently the term Moonies is seen as derogatory by members of the church when used by non-members. It was founded by, and I have to say I'm gonna butcher these like Korean names because I don't know any Korean. I don't know Korean pronunciation, so apologies in advance for that. So the church was founded by Sun Myung Moon, who lived from 1920 to 2012, when he started amassing followers after the Second World War ended. On May 1st, 1954, in Seoul, South Korea, he officially founded the Holy Spirit Association for the Unification of World Christianity, which was the Unification Church's full name until 1994. It has a presence in approximately 100 countries around the world, and its leaders are Moon prior to his death, and his wife, Hak Ja-han, and their followers call them the True Parents. Moon wrote a book called The Divine Principles in 1945, which is the church's official book, that he claims was revealed to him over the period says that Christ's second coming will occur in this age, which would be similar to the time of his first coming, with Christ coming the way he did the first time, as a man in the flesh. By marrying his bride in the flesh, he will establish a family and become the true parents of all mankind. Through accepting the true parents, obeying them, and following them, the original sin of mankind would be removed and people could eventually become perfect. So with true families fulfilling God's ideal, the kingdom of God's will would be established on earth and in heaven. And again, according to the divine principle, that day is now at hand, in the form of sun, young moon. The Unification Church is best known for the mass weddings that they do, called blessing ceremonies, where a large amount of couples receive Moon's blessing for their marriage. Moon also matchmakes at one ceremony, matching 2,500 Korean church members with Japanese church members to promote unity between the two countries. The church has been criticized for its teachings and its social and political influence, with some people calling it a dangerous cult, a political powerhouse, and a business empire. I'm not going to go into huge amount of detail about the church any farther than I already have, since it's not really the point of this video, but it low-key has a huge amount of influence in politics all over the world, not just Korea or Japan. It's kind of scary to think about. The church is involved in business, education, politics, and more, with members having founded, owned, or supported different organizations in those areas. Their political beliefs are anti-communist, and they support Korean reunification. At one point, the church was investigated by the US government as being a front for the KCIA and trying to spy on American politics in the late 70s, though I don't know what the results of that investigation were. In 1994, the New York Times recognized the church's political influence, saying it was, quote, a theocratic powerhouse that is pouring foreign fortunes into conservative causes in the United States. In 1995, the former U.S. President George H.W. Bush and his wife, Barbara Bush, spoke at a FFWPU event in the Tokyo Dome. I forget what that abbreviation means. I mean, I'm sure it's the church. Yeah, it is the church. But yeah, there's so many different abbreviations that this church goes by over time, so. Bush told the gathering, quote, if as president I could have done one thing to have helped the country more, it would have been to do a better job in finding a way, either through speaking out or through raising a moral standard, to strengthen the American family. Hak Ja-han, the main speaker, credited her husband with bringing about the fall of communism and declared that he must save America from, quote, the destruction of the family and moral decay. As far as Japan goes, the church has had a close relationship with the conservative Liberal Democratic Party, which was founded by Nobusuke Kishi and later led by his grandson, Shinzo Abe, who of course was Prime Minister of Japan. Back in 2019, the National Network of Lawyers Against Spiritual Sales released a document protesting congratulatory messages that Abe sent to events organized by the Unification Church and its associated organizations, saying that they were afraid those kinds of messages enhanced the church's authority and encouraged what they call its antisocial activities. When it came to non-political leaders, the church's solicitations for money from Japanese members were pretty aggressive, even predatory, with the Unification members telling Japanese recruits that Korean people's, quote, ancestors are suffering in hell for their sins, and that the only way to save them, end quote, was by giving money to the church. Church members would also probe Japanese recruits for, quote, family troubles and emotional vulnerabilities and, quote, ferret out their income and assets. A network of lawyers in Japan that worked to recover donations by former church members from the church brought about 35,000 claims and recovered more than $206 million since 1987. According to the Mainichi newspaper, since the 1970s, most of the church's money has come from Japan, church was so focused on Japan specifically is that, according to Moon, South Korea is a, quote, Adam nation, aka a patriarchal nation, and Japan is, quote, an Eve nation, meaning it's obligated to fulfill the needs of the patriarch. Which is a little ironic if you know about the history between Japan and Korea. And just in case you don't know, because honestly I didn't know about this until like pretty recently, Japan colonized Korea during its stint of imperialism in the late 1800s, basically I think from the Meiji Restoration up until World War II, and pretty much impoverished and maybe even destroyed Korea until World War II ended, and then the ruination of Korea caused it to split into North and South when it was being rebuilt, from what I understand. In Akahata, a Japanese Communist Party newspaper, Shoichi Fujita from the Religious Information Research Center and the National Associate of Parents of Victims of Moonism, which in Japanese is Sengoku Genbyundo Hikaisha Fubo no Kai. I wrote it out in English instead of Japanese, so it was harder to read that way, which is kind of weird. Anyway, according to them, Japan has a history of aggression against Korea. Therefore, it has an obligation to serve Korea as atonement, or indemnity, as the church calls it. Basically, they're using young Japanese people's sense of guilt for what Japan did in the past to Korea to defraud them of money by forcing church members to invest large amounts of money to the point that they go bankrupt. Sound familiar? It doesn't end once they're bankrupt, though, with the church encouraging families that can't make ends meet to borrow money from banks using their real estate as collateral. The church's president in Japan said that trouble with legal solicitation and large donations were a thing of the past, and that since 2009 they'd had no trouble due to stress on legal compliance. The network of lawyers that I mentioned earlier said that they'd found 300 million yen that they sued for in 2020 alone, so obviously that president is wrong. According to that president, donations were made voluntarily by members solely based on their individual beliefs, and that there were no teachings by the church about how much a person contributes versus how much they'll be saved, and that there were no instructions that pushed bankrupt families to donate even more. One of Moon's sons, Kukjin Moon, also denied that the church was pressuring Japanese members to make large donations to save the spirits of their deceased loved ones, saying instead that members told them it was their ancestors who had instructed them to make large donations. On the contrary, though, Japanese courts have made a number of rulings ordering the church to pay compensation to plaintiffs, saying that the church's missionary work is illegal. There have also been criminal cases related to the church, such as when in 2009 the Tokyo District Court sentenced church members to prison for forcing victims to buy expensive seals, whatever that is. The court ruled that the missionary work was pernicious and that the church members had stoked anxiety in Japanese followers by linking their worries to their longtime ancestral pasts, then immediately forcing them to buy the seals. According to Busan Presbyterian University professor Tak Ji-il, on the surface they are fighting over religious principles, but they are actually fighting over money. Another lawyer, Yasuo Kawai, accused Japanese politicians of not doing anything against the Unification Church, which he said disintegrates families for more than 30 years, and Kito Masaki called for the Diet to conduct a bipartisan investigation of the church. Eventually they did, with the Japanese House of Representatives and House of Councilors passing 2 bills to restrict the activities of religious organizations and provide relief to victims. The bills were supported by the ruling Liberal Democratic Party and opposition parties, the Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan, the Nippon Ishin no Kai, the Democratic Party for the People. The bills were opposed by the Japanese Communist Party and the Reiwa Shinsengumi. The Communist Party opposed the bill because they wanted legislation that was more strict especially Shunghwan Kwok, the honorary president of the Global Peace Foundation, who had held a position second to Moon in the church for a long time, but left in 2009 after some internal drama, apologized on behalf of the Unification Church, saying that the church was responsible for the assassination. According to him, a wave of bankruptcies, divorces, and suicides among Japanese church members had prompted him to normalize Japan's status as an economic force in 2001, but there was strong opposition from other church leaders that ended that attempt. The church denied his claim, saying that it was him that had called for the transfer of money to the church headquarters, which I guess is the opposite of what he was claiming. Yamagami told the police that his motive for the shooting was personal, not political, stemming from what his mom had done with the church and how it had affected Yamagami and his siblings. He had a deep grudge against the church, blaming them for what his mom had done, and when he researched the group, he found out that Shinzo Abe, along with his maternal grandfather, former Prime Minister Nobusuke Kishi, both had connections to the church. So Yamagami believed that they were responsible for the church's influence spreading through Japan. In a letter sent to journalist Kazuhiro Yonemoto on July 7th, the day before the assassination, Yamagami introduced himself as Maratarinai, which literally means still not enough. Or maybe a little more loosely, still not good enough. A regular commenter under that handle on Yonemoto's blog posts, and stressed that he, quote, had spent much time trying to obtain guns. The reason he was writing to Yonemoto specifically is that he was the editor of a blog that reports on the problems of children of religious cult believers. The letter he wrote was sent from Okayama, and the sender's real name wasn't mentioned, but a statement of mutual agreement between Yamagami's family and the Unification Church was included with the letter, in which the return of 50 million yen by the Unification Church was arranged, which I think would be about a little less than $50,000. And the arrangement included Tetsuya Yamagami's name and address, which had been handwritten on the piece of paper. In the letter, Yamagami wrote that his, quote, connection with the Unification Church dates back about 30 years. And he expressed a desire to kill the entire Moon family, but noted that that was unrealistic. He also said that killing Hak-chan, who was Moon's wife, and the leader of the church after he died, or her daughter, wouldn't achieve his goal of getting the Unification Church dissolved. He called Shinzo Abe, quote, not my enemy originally, although I have had negative opinions about him. Abe was just the one of the Unification Church's sympathizers who wields the most influence in the real world. Yonemoto found the letter in his mailbox on July 13th, 5 days after the assassination, and a draft of it was found on Yamagami's computer. Yonemoto, who had never met Yamagami before, said, quote, I think he probably had no one to talk to and wanted to express his feelings to someone. He may have thought I was his friend because I operate the blog he posted on. I understand the suffering of believers' children, but I wish he had consulted with me directly before going that far. Yonemoto initially refused to hand the letter over to police, so they ended up seizing it. Yamagami stated that his Twitter account was at 333_Hill in his letter to Yonemoto, and the account was made in October 2019, the same month that Hak-chan was scheduled to visit Aichi Prefecture. He tweeted that he was, quote, willing to die to liberate every person involved in the Unification Church, and that he had, quote, no concern about what will happen to the Abe administration as a result. His account was suspended from July faced were very similar to the Shukyo Nisei, the religious second generations, which is a Japanese term referring to children being raised by parents who are enthusiastic with their religious practices while neglecting or abusing their children. Abe's assassination brought the Shukyo Nisei issue into the spotlight in Japan's mainstream media, and more Shukyo Nisei victims began to speak out about their hardships and inaction from the government. Yamagami said that his original plan was to assassinate a high-ranking official of the Unification Church, but later decided to target Abe instead, like I said earlier. From around the time his mother went bankrupt, Yamagami would wander around the Unification Church building, carrying a knife and looking for an opportunity to kill Hakuja-han. He planned to kill Han with a Molotov cocktail when she visited Aichi Prefecture in 2019, but gave up on the idea because he couldn't get into the church building. He told investigators that he initially wanted to make a bomb and bought a pressure cooker to do it with, but he eventually decided to change his plan after realizing that a bomb could maim or kill innocent bystanders when it went off, and also that it might fail to actually kill Abe. So he made guns that he could, quote, easily fix on a target. The gun that he used in the shooting was one he had made himself. I don't know if it's due to Japan's strict gun laws and arduous process required to be licensed to own a gun, and he didn't want to go through all that, or if it was because of the expense of buying a gun, or what. But usually in Japan there's like a test that you have to take, and a shooting test, I think, and like it might take a month or two for you to be able to get a gun. And even then, usually it's like a hunting rifle, not like a pistol, not something you could easily conceal. But the gun that he made was like a sawed-off shotgun, so I guess you can't really easily conceal that either. But anyway, during his preparation, he built 7 homemade guns similar to the one he used in the assassination, which police found when they raided his house, though 2 of them hadn't been finished yet. He also did build some things that were possibly explosive devices, which had to be collected from the house by bomb disposal officers after nearby residents were evacuated. Yamagami started buying the material to make guns and gunpowder in spring 2021, learning how to make guns and bombs from YouTube videos. Websites about bomb making and weapons manufacturing were discovered in Yamagami's browsing history as well. The gun he used for the assassination was fired by a battery igniting the gunpowder with an electric current. To dry his homemade gunpowder that he made out of fertilizer and packed in shotgun shells, Yamagami rented an apartment between March and September of 2021, then a garage in Nara from November 2021 to February 2022, which cost 15,000 yen per month, which is about like $120. He was unemployed after resigning in June 2022, and at that time he was 600,000 yen in debt, which is about like $4,000, with 200,000 yen in his savings account, which is about $1,000, while having to pay 30,000 yen, or $250 a month in rent for his 1-bedroom apartment. Making homemade weapons was expensive for Yamagami, which pushed him to proceed with assassinating Abe in July 2022. He tested his homemade guns by firing them at wooden boards with an aluminum-covered tray as a target. He also said he tested them in the mountains in Nara Prefecture. He also tested them at a facility that was linked to the church on July 7th, the day he went to Okayama to go to Abe's election campaign, and 6 bullet holes were discovered by police at the entrance of a building next to the Nara branch of the Unification Church. After seeing a video of Abe's speech at a church event in September 2021, Yamagami started to stalk Abe at different locations for months as he planned the assassination. On the day before the assassination, Yamagami traveled by Shinkansen and attended a Liberal Democratic Party rally in Okayama Prefecture with the plan to kill Abe there, but he backed out after seeing the security to get into the rally. When Abe's schedule was changed to allow him to visit Nara City on July 8th, Yamagami kept track of his movements using Abe's website. Yamagami's place was only a 5-minute walk from Shinomiya, which is only 1 stop west of Yamato Saidaiji. July 8th, he went to the northern exit of Yamato Saitaichi Station at 11:30 a.m. and slowly approached where Abe was giving his speech, unnoticed by Abe's protection team. He fired his homemade shotgun and didn't hit anyone, and when Abe turned around to look because of the sound, Yamagami took a few steps forward and fired the second shot that killed Abe. His bodyguards rushed forward as Abe collapsed and restrained Yamagami on the ground, arresting him for attempted murder, which was upgraded to murder when Abe died. He was described by the Nara Prefectural Police as being calm during his arrest, making no attempt to resist or run away as they transferred him to Nara Nishi Police Station. A video recording the area of the assassination from the sky by a TV station was shared all over the place online by conspiracy theorists, claiming that Abe was killed by a sniper rifle from the roof of a nearby mall called Sanma City Saitaichi. The conspiracy theory said that there was a white tent visible on the roof of the mall, and that was where the sniper was hiding. In reaction, the management company of the mall made a statement that the tent was there because they were cleaning the ventilation ducts, and said that it couldn't have been used by anyone without authorization. Finally, a comedian admitted that he was responsible for spreading the conspiracy theory online via an apology video on YouTube that he made after people started criticizing him. Several media outlets misidentified the assassin as video game developer Hideo Kojima, for only God knows what reason. Apparently that idea came from jokes that were posted on 4chan and Twitter that were taken as fact and published by the far-right French politician Damien Rieu, I don't know how to pronounce French names, and the Greek news outlet ANT1, and the Iranian website Mashrek News. ANT1 uploaded a broadcast talking about that to YouTube, but then removed it, and Ryu took down his original tweet and issued an apology. Kojima's company, Kojima Productions, condemned the false reports and threatened legal action against those spreading the rumor. In addition to all that, there was a fake tweet supposedly made by Abe detailing supposed information that could incriminate Hillary Clinton in some way, and people were spreading that around saying that that was the reason he got killed. 30 minutes after the shooting, a threatening phone call was made to Matsuyama's office, where Abe had been initially scheduled to give a speech, and a suspect for that was arrested on July 9th, 2 days later, for making threats. Hours after the shooting, online assassination threats were made in Singapore and Taiwan against Prime Minister of Singapore Lee Hsien Loong and Republic of China President Tsai Ing-wen. In Singapore, a 45-year-old man was arrested after his online threats were reported to the police, and in Taiwan, a 22-year-old man in Tainan was arrested for the threats at his house in the Yongkang district. Thailand also tightened security around its government officials and planned to increase security at the upcoming Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, which was scheduled for November 17th to 18th in Bangkok. So before any formal charges were brought against Yamagami, he was held at the Osaka detention house and was psychiatrically evaluated to determine if he was mentally competent to be indicted. The evaluation was set to end on November 29th, so it would last a little over 4 months after the assassination, but was extended by a request from prosecutors to February 6th, 2023. Yamagami's lawyers appealed that, and the extension was reduced, so the evaluation was set to end on January 10th instead. On December 24th, 2022, the Nara District Prosecutor's Office determined that Yamagami was competent enough to be tried for murder, based on factors like his ability to make the gun that was used in the assassination. For reference, usually the psychiatric evaluation of a criminal suspect in Japan takes about 3 months, so the fact that Yamagami's took almost half a year was pretty unusual. A News Post 7 journalist speculated that the prosecutors were waiting for the public sentiment over the assassination to die down, but the aftermath from the actual assassination, as well as the public sympathy and idolization that was being shown for Yamagami, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail later. On January 10th, 2023, Yamagami was transferred back to Nara Nishi Police Station, and an It set a metal detector off when court officials were examining the box, so it was assumed to be a bomb, and everyone in the building was evacuated. The bomb squad was called in, and they opened the box to find that it was full of petitions with 13,000 signatures asking for leniency on Yamagami. Leniency for Yamagami. A person in Kiyosei, Tokyo, admitted to police that they were the one who sent the box, but they said they didn't use any staples or paper clips, so no one was sure how the box set off the metal detector. And I imagine that person didn't intend for it to be assumed to be a bomb, so. In October 2023, a pre-trial meeting was held in court with Yamagami's lawyers and the prosecutors, with heightened security after the bomb scare. Yamagami himself didn't attend the hearing because of fears after the bomb scare that his presence might make people get a little goofy. The hearing was basically just for the court officials, prosecutors, and his lawyers to narrow down issues, review evidence, and set the trial schedule. The meeting only lasted for about 20 minutes, apparently. As far as I could tell, since I couldn't find any articles from 2024 about the trial, it hasn't happened yet, with people speculating that it would happen in the beginning of 2024 at the earliest, but also saying that it might take even longer since apparently there's a lot of evidence and documents to go through. For all this time, Yamagami has been reported to be spending his time in jail at the Osaka detention house, reading history and philosophy books and newspapers. Apparently, he was on edge immediately after the assassination, but he's relaxed since. Since Yamagami's arrest, he's been sympathized with and hailed as an icon, both in Japan and around the world. T-shirts with Yamagami's picture from the assassination were being sold on Chinese online marketplaces and were worn by some Chinese people to public events. Though most likely that's not because of Yamagami so much as because Abe had a history of denying Japan's war crimes in China, along with paying tribute to war criminals from the time and making pro-Taiwan statements. So I guess they just hated Shinzo Abe. In Japan, Yamagami's family had been receiving a large amount of gift money and presents, like food, clothes, and books, through online gift-giving websites from supporters of Yamagami, according to his uncle. When Yamagami's Twitter account was listed in the leak of his letter to Yonemoto, Yamagami's Twitter followers surged from 0 to 45,000 in one day. A lot of his tweets also got a lot of likes and retweets until his account was suspended on July 19th. On Yamagami's 42nd birthday that September, he got a lot of messages celebrating and admiring him on social media with the hashtag Tetsuya Yamagami birthday. Japanese people cosplayed Yamagami's appearance during the assassination at events such as the rally against Abe's state funeral. The cosplayers held cardboard signs displaying the different leaders they were against, including the leaders of Russia, China, and Iran. A Change.org petition pleading for a reduction in Yamagami's eventual sentence got 8,700 signatures by October 8th, 2022. People accused the sponsors of the petition of approving of the murder, which they denied, saying that they just sympathized with Yamagami since his suffering as a Shukyo Nisei was not an isolated case. They also saw that he was working hard to rehabilitate himself by reading books, I guess, so they thought that society should give him a second chance instead of sentencing him to death. A fictional biographical film based on the reports about Yamagami called Revolution Plus One, directed by Masao Adachi, was premiered in small church while admitting that what Yamagami did was wrong. Yamagami's younger sister and mother refused to be interviewed by the media. They were 37 and 70 years old, respectively, at the time of Abe's assassination. For about a month after the assassination, Yamagami's mother lived in his paternal uncle's home before she moved to Osaka alone under the assistance of someone from the Unification Church. She is reportedly still a member of the Unification Church after the assassination and is apologetic on behalf of the church over her son's alleged crimes. So I think I kind of mentioned this already, but Yamagami's paternal uncle, the older brother of Yamagami's father, gave a lot of accounts about Yamagami's family, and at the time of the assassination he was 77 years old. Originally working in the construction contractor industry, he got an attorney's license and started his own legal consulting firm in Osaka. Despite being a lawyer himself, he will not represent Yamagami during the criminal proceedings. Yamagami's mother often asked him for money to donate to the church while neglecting her children, to the point that he once threw a cup of tea on her in a fit of rage. For the whole year since the assassination, Yamagami refused to respond to his mother's requests for visitation in the detention center, while reading and expressing appreciation to letters from his supporters that he was receiving. In the aftermath of the assassination, the Nara city government considered erecting a monument on the site where Abe was shot. After opposition from residents, the plans were abandoned, and an unmarked flower bed that was part of an already planned redevelopment scheme of the area now serves as a de facto memorial. The exact spot of Abe's assassination is in the middle of a newly repaved road that was opened for traffic in April 2023. After the assassination, the Kishida administration opened an investigation into the Unification Church. On July 31st, 2022, Kishida demanded the members of his party to carefully explain their relationship with the church to the public. The alleged relationship caused the Kishida cabinet's approval to drop by 8% in July, according to the Yomiuri Shimbun, or by 13% according to NHK. Both polls also showed that over 80% of respondents felt that the disclosure by the politicians of their relationship with the UC was insufficient. On August 6th, Kishida announced that he would reshuffle his cabinet on August 10th, much earlier than September 2022, as it had been originally scheduled, and that all members of the next cabinet would be closely examined for their ties with the church. Taro Kono, the newly appointed Minister of Digital Affairs in the reshuffle, established a, quote, spiritual sales review committee in the Consumer Affairs Agency to hold weekly meetings with experts in cult-related frauds, including Masaki Kito of the Anti-Cult Lawyers Network, Sengoku Benden. In a December 9, 2022 Consumer Committee special meeting, Kono stated that he personally recognizes the Unification Church as a cult. On October 24, 2022, one of the retaining ministers in the reshuffled cabinet, Daishiro Yamagiwa, announced his resignation as the Minister of Economic Revitalization after being criticized for his past engagements with the UC, announcing his ties with the church only after the reshuffle to the public, and unsatisfactory responses regarding his participation in UC-related events such as, quote, I have no memory or I have no record, when being questioned by the media and opposition lawmakers. The church claimed that negative media reports related to the assassination led to hate speech and death threats against their followers. According to a female receptionist working at the Shibuya office of the church, she's been receiving 2 to 3 trolling letters every day, some containing garbage and razor blades. On August 18th, 2022, the church organized a rally in Seoul against the Japanese media. About 3,000 followers, comprising a considerate portion of Japanese women married to Korean men via the church's mass weddings, were taken from their facility in Gapyeong County via coaches to participate in the protest. All participants refused to be interviewed by any Japanese media on site, with deliberate intervention from staff of the church. On August 21st, the church released a statement on its Japanese site which condemned the media's scrutiny toward the organization's political ties as a witch hunt, demanding apologies to their followers and threatening legal action. On October 27, 2022, the lawyers representing the church announced that they filed a civil case for defamation against TBS Radio, Nippon TV, and the guests who commented on their shows, Masaki Kito and Yoshifu Arita, demanding public apologies and a total of 33 million yen in damages. In an interview with All Nippon News Network, Korean journalist Song Ju-yeol revealed that, according to an informant, the assassination had thrown the church into a state of crisis. Negative attention toward the church could realistically impede their capability to raise funds needed for operating the organization globally, in which a major portion was contributed by their Japanese followers. The 2023 New Year greeting by Tomihiro Tanaka for a private meeting was leaked and reported by the media, and that Tanaka addressed to their second-generation followers to prepare for a climactic battle against religious persecution, as, quote, 2023 marked the 400th anniversary of persecution against Christianity in Japan, beginning in 1623. At the anniversary of Abe's assassination, a private statement was made by Hak-chan to the top executives of the church. Han reinforced that, quote, Japan is a country of war criminals and must make compensation to Korea, and ordered the Japanese politicians, including Kishida, quote, receive education for persecuting their organization. The UC refused to verify the authenticity of the leaked recording when requested for comment by the media. On September 6, 2023, the Minister of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology, Keiko Nagaoka, announced the ministry's decision to file an administrative fine against the church with the Tokyo District Court. This action was taken due to the church's lack of cooperation in responding to the ministry's inquiries during their investigation, aimed at determining if there was sufficient evidence of wrongdoing to justify revoking the church's religious corporation status. According to the ministry's statement, they had exercised their right to question the church on 7 occasions since November 2022 regarding the church's operations and fundraising practices. However, the church declined to answer more than 100 questions, which accounted for 20% of the total questions submitted. Under the religious juridical person law, failure to cooperate with the ministry's right to question carries a maximum penalty of 100,000 yen per organization, which would be about $10,000, or a little bit less. During the government probe, the ministry were also holding closed-door hearings with the victims of the Unification Church and experts such as the National Network of Lawyers Against Spiritual Sales, which is the Zengoku Benden that I mentioned earlier, to build the case against the church. On October 12, 2023, the ministry officially announced its intention to file an application for a dissolution order under Article 81 of Religious Juridical Person Law against the Unification Church. The decision was driven by the presentation of substantial evidence indicating that the purposes of the Unification Church had deviated from legitimate religion and its activities had significantly harmed public welfare. The newly appointed minister, Masahito Moriyama, described the Unification Church's actions as having, quote, systematically, maliciously, and persistently manipulated public psychological distress to accumulate substantial funds. These funds, due to ensuing civil claims from affected parties, served as sufficient grounds to trigger the dissolution order. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida voiced agreement, asserting that the decision to propose a dissolution order was based on objective facts and rigorous judgment. Unlike previous cases where dissolution orders were pursued due to criminal convictions, this is the first instance of a religious organization being subjected to such an order without a criminal conviction. Prior to this, only 2 religious organizations faced dissolution proceedings initiated by the government, which was Shinrikyo in 1996 in relation to its involvement in the 1995 Tokyo subway sarin gas attack, and Wakayama Myogakuji in 2002 for a fraud conviction. Should the court approve the dissolution order, the Unification Church would lose its tax benefits associated with registered religious organizations. Despite that, the Unification Church can continue its operations organization which was not acknowledged by Osaka University. Lingering around campus, the school put up warning signs on campus to urge students to avoid cult-related groups like CARP. The signs listed the common behaviors of the workers of such a group, like asking for personal contact or taking a survey. Since 2004, Osaka University provided lectures to all first-year students about the problems with religious cults and how to deal with them on campus. Many other schools, including Waseda University, Keio University, and Ritsumeikan University, warned first-year students about on-campus recruitment activities. According to World CARP Japan, the Japanese organization of CARP, there are about 30 CARP circles active in universities across Japan, where they help clean up communities and teach primary school children. Since Abe's assassination, a woman under the pseudonym Sayuri Ogawa, as one of the former UC followers who suffered financially and mentally, has become outspoken about her past experiences of how she was exploited by the church and her own parents. On September 14, 2022, she was arranged by the Japan News Network to speak face-to-face with the Minister of Justice, Yasuhiro Hanashi, on air, and demanded passing new laws to regulate the malpractices of the UC and protect children from religious parents. On October 6, 2022, she and her husband held a press conference to explain their view on the church and why they feel exploited, which was interrupted by a message sent by her parents via the UC, who accused her of lying pathologically due to her mental illness. By the end of the press conference, she demanded the dissolution of the UC in tears. On December 10th, the House of Representatives and the House of Councilors passed 2 bills to restrict the activities of religious organizations, such as the UC, and provide relief to victims. The bills were designed to address social problems caused by the UC, and the political parties and the media saw these bills as a way to restrict the cults in the process, leading up to changes in legislation. The new law stipulates prohibited acts and duty of care for juridical persons, including religious organizers, when soliciting donations. Prohibited acts include the following. A juridical person must not induce the donor to borrow money or sell their home or fields in order to raise the funds for the donation. A juridical person must not accompany the donor to a place from which the donor is unable to leave, and a juridical person must not prevent the donor from consulting with someone. The duty of care is that the juridical person shall not suppress the free will of the soliciting subject, and that the solicitation shall not make life difficult for the soliciting subject's family. If a juridical person commits a prohibited act, a correction order is issued, and a person who repeatedly violates the order is subject to imprisonment for up to 1 year and a fine of up to 1,000,000 yen, which I guess would be about $100,000. In addition, it is also stipulated that donations contracted while the target of the solicitation is under brainwashing can be cancelled. The law also stipulates that the victim's family can revoke the donation due to improper solicitation, and that the victim or his or her family can claim from the juridical person the amount of past damages, as well as living expenses and child support that the child or spouse is entitled to in the future. The new law then defines spiritual sales, in which a contract can be rescinded as soliciting donations or selling goods after taking advantage of the anxiety of the target of the solicitation or causing the target of the solicitation to become anxious. Minister of State Consumer Affairs and Food Safety Taro Kono will have jurisdiction over these laws. These bills were supported by the ruling Liberal Democratic Party in Komeito and opposition parties Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan, Nippon Ishin Nakai, and Democratic Party for the People. I think I said this already. Sayuri Ogawa, who was invited to spectate the parliamentary session when the bills were being passed, was grateful of the new laws to be made in such a tight schedule of the parliament, but she also stressed that there are still many challenges ahead surrounding the UC and its victims, with the most pressing one being the new bill protecting children from religious abuse. Lawyer Hiroshi Yamaguchi, who represents Sengoku Benden, wished that there would have been more time to make a solid bill. He worried that under the new laws it would still be difficult to prove that the claimant's free will was being suppressed when accepting the transaction, and also the definition of what allows the victim's child or spouse to demand the assassination, they are also being criticized for their silence on the scandal before the incident. Le Figaro reported that in their initial reports about the suspect's motives, most Japanese news outlets were complicit in concealing the identity of the Unification Church, referring to it as a, quote, specific religious organization. Journalist Eito Suzuki criticized the Japanese mainstream media for failing to monitor the relationship between the church and the politicians until the incident, the assassination. This inability to address societal issues is being likened to the scandal involving J-pop giant Johnny Kitagawa, who was accused of sexually abusing his artists. The Kitagawa scandal only received extensive media attention in Japan after a BBC documentary on the matter was aired in March 2023. This led to several major news outlets, including the NHK, issuing apologies in recognition of their years of silence that effectively allowed Kitagawa's sexual abuses to continue unabated. So, that's the end of the story. I hope it wasn't too boring with all the political stuff and stuff about laws, but I figured it was important to talk about the change that was brought about by the assassination, because those people, those kids who were raised by religious fanatics, they definitely deserve justice. And as unfortunate as it is that someone got killed, that anyone got killed, I'm not going to say that it did a lot of good, but clearly a lot happened, and a lot of laws that should have been passed way earlier got passed as a result. So it's unfortunate that it had to come to such an extreme reaction from one of the victims of the Unification Church before people finally were willing to accept that, like, this is wrong, like something was wrong and it needed to be fixed. And despite hundreds or maybe even thousands of these kids who had been brought up by religious parents who were giving all their money away, coming out and trying to speak up and all that stuff, all of it just got ignored until it couldn't be ignored anymore. So yeah, let me know what you thought of this video in the comments, and please check out my other videos. I feel like this was probably a pretty long one. Like, just looking at my camera, it's probably going to be almost an hour, maybe over an hour. So yeah, thanks for hanging in there if you watched all the way to the end. I mentioned in my last video that I was going to make a travel vlog about my trip to San Francisco to get a tattoo that I took back in April. And I still am going to make that probably, but I don't know, when I've done travel vlog videos in the past, I've done a couple, and they just, like, YouTube just hates them. YouTube's just literally like, oh, this video that you worked really hard on, I'm not going to show it to anyone. I don't really know why. So I do want to make it because I have all the footage and stuff, and I think it's like a fun video, but the idea of putting in hours of work for it just to get like a quarter of the views that my videos, my true crime videos get, is kind of depressing. I don't know. So yeah, we'll see if I make that one or not. But yeah, like I said, leave me a comment and a like, and subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell notification thingy so that you can find out when I post videos, because YouTube doesn't like to tell people. And yeah, I'll be back with another video sometime soon. Thank you for watching.